Hello and welcome to my very first reaction video on this channel. Today I wanted to watch with you Ali Abdaal's recent video that he put out where he said he was quitting medicine. If you aren't familiar with Ali, he is a physician over in the UK, and I thought it would be really good to just go through because it looks like he's outlined it. I haven't watched it yet, but it looks like he's outlining it in a way that kind of goes through how he made the choice and maybe how other people can make the choice too if they're thinking about making a career change or just, a pivot. Like we talked about in my last video here, where I talked about how I'm making a big pivot. I've been a nurse practitioner for 3 years. I thought I would live and die in primary care. I've been a nurse for 10, and it's turning into a very different direction. And a lot of you in the comments of the video could relate to that a lot. So I thought this would be interesting to walk through and just see like what his journey was like, if we can learn anything from it. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's go see how it goes. Like I said, I've never done one of these. I also have the plague. I don't know what kind of plague, but I keep waiting to feel better to film this video. And it's now been 2 weeks. So I was like, I guess I give up. I guess I just have the plague. All right, ready, set, go. Okay, so I just realized the video was 43 minutes long, so we won't watch the whole thing together. I'll watch it and then I'll just kind of give you like the highlights, reaction-y types of parts.
I can comfortably admit to myself and to you guys that I'm going to be leaving medicine for good. So in this video, we're going to have a little bit of a chat around the thought process behind this decision. And we're going to talk a bit about how things like money, fame, fulfillment, status, and impact, and helping people, all of that kind of ties into this decision.
So because this is literally exactly how I feel. I largely have decided I'm not going to go back to primary care, at least for this foreseeable future, as a nurse practitioner. Actually, I'm not going to work clinically as a nurse practitioner for this foreseeable future because I was finding interest, more fun, and a lot more like fulfillment in doing things like YouTube videos. I have a whole bunch of ideas of things I could do in terms of patient education online, and just like I'm liking my other education job with Lecturio. But I have a lot of guilt, just like he said. I have a lot of guilt. It feels weird leaving in the middle of a pandemic. But at the same time, you have to do what's right for you, not what's right for everyone else. It's just like hard.
And thinking about what is the purpose of work. And the way I see it, there's broadly 5 different things that we work for the sake.
I do think this is a really interesting checklist too, to look at and see like, what is my job actually doing for me? Is it ticking any of these boxes? Is it ticking all of them? Or are you looking at it and you're like, oh, like I really do feel like I could be helping people in other ways. Now let's see what he's going to go through and kind of talk about with each one. But while you're watching it yourself, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of go through and just think about like, how does my life apply to all of these different things, in terms of like, I'm going to put myself back in the mentality of like, should I return to primary care? And we'll see how it goes.
Like you can get fun and purpose and meaning and social vibes and fulfillment and all that kind of stuff from volunteering at your local church or helping out with a charity without getting paid for it. And the only thing that makes it work is the fact that you are being paid for it.
So that's interesting. Basically saying that the only thing that you absolutely have to get out of your job is money, because you can get everything else on this list out of something else like volunteering.
Having fun, helping people, having meaning, having impact, that kind of stuff. It is all like a privilege once you've gotten to the point where you've ticked the box of, okay, I'm making enough money from my job to make ends meet. And so it's not a factor for continuing to be a doctor, because in the UK, doctors don't get paid very much. And the sort of money that I can make doing this YouTube thing is astronomically higher than the sort of money that I could feasibly be making as a doctor.
That's not the case for me. I would definitely make more money if I just went and worked full-time as an MP.
And honestly, when it came to my decision to leave medicine, the fun bit was like a pretty large one, because I genuinely did enjoy the job. Like it was quite fun. I enjoyed the banter with the coworkers. I enjoyed talking to patients. I enjoyed learning the science part. I enjoyed taking blood. I enjoyed those aspects of the job.
Good for you. At this point, I did once. And I'm not trying to, this isn't like poo-pooing on everything having to do with medicine. I would say my experience was the opposite, where I just didn't like it. I did not like having to navigate through the health insurance for everything and everything getting denied. And it was just, I wasn't actually getting to do anything. I think working in the ER is probably different. And he works in England. So yeah, they have the NHS. So like everything is covered. Insurance isn't like a thing. But mine was just so down. You couldn't even do your job because of insurance. So I'm glad he had a positive experience with it.
Am I doing medicine because I enjoy the personal satisfaction of helping someone who's in front of me? Or am I doing medicine because I think the thing that I do actually has impact? When it comes to a developed world system, it's really the system that saves lives rather than the amazing prowess of an individual doctor. Yes, maybe if you're the world expert.
So that's really interesting. And I think is a really good perspective that I think we lose a lot of the time, especially as nurses or people in healthcare. We think that if we leave, the ship is going to sink. And in reality, the ship is gigantic and it's going to be just fine if we hop off board, and especially if you feel like you could make a bigger impact somewhere else. Like I decided I could probably educate more people if I went to the YouTube and just did it via YouTube, and I would still get to feel like, oh, I got to educate my patients. I have dreams of doing all these big projects that are like more involved with patient education, that are hopefully going to reach more people than I would be able to if I was in my office. And even if so I think that's a good thing to weigh too. If you're like, oh, what impact could I have? Like you're obvious, and obviously you're having a huge impact when you're going into the office or whenever you're interacting with patients. This is just saying, like, I felt guilty like this too. I was like, oh, I'm like taking away from, my patients and the healthcare. Like, how egocentric is that? Like, I'm taking away from people's being able to see me. And when I really stepped back, I was like, Liz, that's very like, the people will be fine. They're going to be just fine. And really, I can probably, have a bigger impact realistically somewhere else. I have similarly felt this when I quit my nursing jobs or when I reduced my hours at my nursing job. I was like, how will they survive? Newsflash, they survived. All of your units are surviving without you when you leave or you switch or you go somewhere that's more healthy for you.
There's the idea of progression and purpose and a sense of growth. And when you're in like a medical training thing, you have this like sense of progression. You're like, yep, I'm learning things all the time.
Okay, so now in this section, he's talking about different things about bringing like meaning and purpose. And I really do think healthcare is one of those things that pretty much whatever job you're in within it. And if you don't work in healthcare too, like I know a lot of you are teachers or I feel like that's my main thing. I have a lot of teachers, accountants. I have a few accountants, and let me know where you work down below. A lot of healthcare people, obviously. And healthcare, I mean, it's fairly impactful. You are literally being with people and they're, as they're having these life-changing moments. I think that is one thing that healthcare has given, a lot of. I never could go home and be like, oh, I like literally didn't affect anyone, because that's just not true. Sometimes, like in kind of contrast, my husband who works with computers, sometimes he's like, what am I even doing? Like, I'm kind of the cog in this wheel and like, what is this actually doing? But I feel like that is one nice thing we have as healthcare people is our job does have a lot of meaning, even if that meaning isn't like spread out to, like we just talked about, a ton of people. To the people we do impact, it's usually a really big impact. And you can feel like, oh, I did something today, which is really, really nice.
Started like really thinking about, what do I actually want to do with my life? What are the things that mean that value to me? What are my values? That kind of stuff. And I came across this exercise called the gravestone technique, which is to imagine what would you want written on your gravestone when you're dead, obviously. Like I care more about being a decent teacher.
Think of, what do I want written on my gravestone? Guys, let me know what you want written on your gravestones down below. Also, I think I just figured out how to get this to like all go away. So whatever. There was like a weird thing around it before. It's fine. What do I want written on my gravestone? That's a really interesting way of looking at it. Like I've said this recently. I forget where I was talking, but I said like I feel like healthcare, especially nursing, can like really eat up your identity. I was talking to a new nurse and they were saying like, what's something that can help me like combat this burnout? And I was like, just keep yourself, like your individuality and yourself so in the center, because it's so easy to lose yourself. So many people that I know that are nurses are like, oh, when you ask them to describe themselves, they're like, oh, I'm a nurse and a mother and a blah, 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 blah. And my hope would be that your descriptor would still be something like uniquely, like just a little bit more personal than that. When you're describing yourself, I used to tell my new nurses who I was precepting, I was like, I want you to, when I ask you, like, who are you? I don't want the first thing that comes out of your mouth to be like a nurse, a respiratory therapist, a CNA. Like, I want it to be something about you, which means you're still doing your hobbies. You're keeping enough of like your identity that you're still you. And I feel like this targets that. Like on my gravestone, I don't want it to say that I was a nurse. You know what I mean? So like, are you doing the 3 or 4 things that are going to get you to what you want on your gravestone? And now I really need to think like, what would I want on my gravestone? I think I would want good teacher because I love teaching. I'm going to steal that one. Maybe like not adventurous. I'm not very adventurous, but just like always looking into like new things, like constantly wanting to like learn new things and just like kind of eccentric. Maybe we could just say eccentric. And then probably like just like good human, that my family and my kids and other people I love know that I like love them and that people would feel like when I interacted with them that it like made their life better, and I was like a safe person to come to. So I don't know how to succinctly say that, but that's what I want mine to say. What do you want yours to say? But I love this exercise. I think it really narrows down for you like what really are your goals at the end of the day? You know what I mean? What can you let go by the wayside, and how are you going to kind of hone in on those things?
So like that was one thing that was kind of interesting for me. And it's a question that I'd encourage you to think about as well. What do you actually want written on your gravestone? I also did this exercise called the ideal ordinary week, where I imagined, okay, what does my ideal ordinary week look like? A year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I did this exercise and I realized that working as a doctor does not fit into this kind of conception of my life at all. And I kind of realized
and this
that
is, I think, something that's really, really helpful. And I would super encourage you, if you're on the cusp of finding a new job or just like making a life turn. I didn't do this exact thing, but I did say to myself when I was thinking of going back, like if I could do anything, like what would I want to do? And that's when I kind of realized I was like, oh, I would just like work on my YouTube stuff. I would do more education stuff, and I wouldn't work in an office as an NP, because I was trying to figure out different telehealth things and fitting it in. And I was like, I don't actually want to do that. So I think I love that idea of just like planning out your ideal week. You aren't probably going to get your absolute ideal week. At least I know I can't. My ideal week would probably be a little bit too lazy to be like viable. It sounds like he's well, I know from watching his channel, he's like a very motivated human. My ideal week would involve a lot of downtime, a lot of crocheting, a lot of playing weird games on my phone. Just, we wouldn't get a lot done. And then like some things like YouTube and fun things, but the world needs motivated people. It's good. But I like this exercise too.
As I've been thinking about the decision, do I stay in medicine or do I leave? A big part of it has been like, ooh, I don't want to lose that badge of honor, that badge of prestige that being a doctor gives you. But, you know, it's not.
And I totally get that. And I'm not even a doctor. So I felt that a lot. I've been like, oh my gosh, if I stop practicing clinically as an NP, well, like, what will people think? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but it's still that little thing in the back of your mind where you're like, what will people think? Will people even watch my channel still? Because I'm not what kind of brought them here in the first place. Like, all of those things I super duper relate to. And I think if we're honest, most of us probably do. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through all of these, I really, really like this list that he has. He kind of goes through the 5 things that he thinks go into a job. You could always add whatever you feel like goes into a job for you. And then he goes through it and he decides what is actually impacting this decision. Like, what am I not feeling fulfilled in, to kind of help direct you when you're like, I know I need a change, but I don't know what kind of change. So you go through the whole thing. Is it that I need more money? Okay, I need to go find a job with more money. Is it that you need more like fun? So we just need to find, what job sounds like literally more interesting. Then we can go do that. Is it that you feel like you're not helping people? We can kind of go and see like, how else can we help people more? Like, could you just volunteer on the side, and would that fill that bucket for you? Could you do something else that would help you with that? What do you need there? Purpose and meaning. Again, like, could you do something on the side or add a different, project to your job that would give you the purpose or meaning? Do you need to go into a job that is more aligned with your purpose and meaning? And then social status, like, is that something that you are aiming for? And therefore, like, you need to go back to school and get a bajillion letters after your name. This is kind of a nice thing. He landed on helping people. He feels like the only thing that he's not doing as a doctor is helping people enough, or as much as he could, ironically. And when I went through it, mine was fun. I was like, I'm not having fun. Let's find something that is a little bit more fun. So I think that's a really good, helpful exercise if you know you need a change, but you aren't quite sure what part is missing. And that way you can kind of run in that direction.
I think a big one was fear. And
now we're going to get into what are things that were holding him back from this decision. I think this is something we can all relate to. Fear. I mean, that's a huge one. You're just like, what if my channel tanks? What if this doesn't work? What if I lose all of my nurse practitioner skills? What if people judge me for like working so hard for this degree and then now it's not working? Like, I have a lot of fears.
Let's start with risk aversion, because risk aversion is like a nicer way of, it sounds a bit fancier than fear. Like, I was just scared. What if this YouTube thing dies? There's very few YouTubers who are big today, who were big 10 years ago. The internet is quite volatile, that kind of stuff. Therefore, why don't I be a doctor anyway? Because then at least I have a backup option to go back to. and at least I have like a solid and safe kind of career.
A lot of this was to like, what if I leave and then decide? So I'm doing like a lot of online education stuff with Lecturio. And one was like, well, what if I leave the bedside or leave my clinical practice and decide I want to go back to it? Like, and then I'll have been out of it for too long. That's my biggest fear of like this.
I can easily use those skills to make more money if I need to in the future. And so holding on.
And I think this plays well into like literally any career that you have. You can use the skills that you have to do something else. I feel like a big thing I've heard from people is like, oh, I did all of this to get here. And now like, if I don't do this, I'm not using those skills. You know, if I hear this from nurses all the time, I very much relate to it when you're like, oh, if I don't take this specific type of nursing job, then I'm wasting my nursing skills. And that's just not true. Like, you learned something from the experience and you're going to go learn more, and you can always relearn things. Like, you're just constantly accruing more knowledge and insight. And it's not going to stick with you. You can't like refresh it. You can't learn new things and evolve even more. Like, it's not a waste. You are a different human because of what you did, and it's not a waste. Okay, in this next part, he talked all about like going part-time and why it didn't work, because even when like he would have just rather have been doing what he actually likes doing, which is like the YouTube thing. And that's exactly how I felt. I was doing telehealth, like continuing to do telehealth for the office I worked for in North Carolina. And I was doing my own thing in the morning. And when I got to the afternoon, I was like, I worked in the afternoon for telehealth. I was like, I just don't want to do this. And after enough of those days, I was like, oh, I feel like this is a bright red sign. Like, so if there's something in your life where you're like, you know, I'm doing this part-time, kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and you're hating the one aspect of it, just go through your little checklist.
You know, there are people who are far more empathetic than I am, people who are far better at medicine than I am. And if they were to see one of my colleague can be equally nice to them, right? So the fact that I'm the one there being nice to the patient and holding their hand and stuff, that alone probably shouldn't be a reason for me to continue to do the thing. And really, if I were doing that, the reason I'd be doing it is because I want to feel good rather than because I want the patient to feel good. Because like I said, the patient would feel good anyway, because if you put me out of the system, another doctor would take my place and they would be the one holding the patient's hand.
That's a really good perspective, because again, I think at least I do this. I'm like, well, I make such a difference. And in reality, someone else would be there if I'm not there. And it's not a good enough reason for me to stay if I don't like it. And it's not a good enough reason for you to stay if you don't like it, because someone else will be there. It will be okay. The ship will not sink without you. But your little own personal ship needs you to be a happy captain, a fulfilled, happy captain.
How do you deal with the critics from people who invalidate the worthiness of being a content creator and spending more energy on that than being a doctor? This was a big one. Being a doctor is like worthwhile and valuable to society. Being a content creator, you're just making videos on the internet. But I've kind of discussed.
I've gotten a lot of comments from people who have, and I think this isn't going to come with any change in profession. And this is obviously everyone's not going to go be a content creator. I've gotten a lot of this where people are like, I can't believe like, oh, everyone who's a nurse, you know, just leaves to go become a social media influencer or like something else. Like, some people need to stay and do the hard work. And I've heard that from so many people, and like, that's totally fine if that's your opinion. I just think it's, you know, you're just having an impact in a very different way. And if you're on the cusp of this, and the thing that is holding you back from whatever you want to switch to is like, what will people think? I feel you. It sounds like this is a very common problem. He's feeling it. I'm feeling it. But at the end of the day, like, what those people think isn't, you know, are you going to regret not doing something else for the sake of like, oh, like, what does Mary actually think about this? Mary's not going to be with you there, probably on the last day on earth, being like, I'm really glad you stayed in that job you didn't like. That would have been really uncomfortable. I would have had to make fun of you on the Instagram. Don't you think? As you're like dying. It's highly unlikely. I don't think Mary will be there.
Thing about changing your mind. I want to include an excerpt from a conversation I had with Professor Grace Lorden, who's a professor of behavioral sciences at the London School of Economics. Here's what she said about this.
If I was to think about leaders of the future, actually, their ability to stand up and say, I don't know, I got it wrong, or I've changed my mind. Those three things are really in the forefront of my mind, because when you're navigating through uncertainty, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and that's okay. But it's the deliberate part. Have you sat down and deliberately now changed your mind? Or is it something, you use the word willy-nilly, is it a willy-nilly kind of reflex action? And then it might be worth revisiting.
I think changing your mind is actually a good thing. I think there is value in quitting, and there is so little value in clinging to a decision that you made some time ago. Even if you have, like I have, announced it to the internet. Loads of people still.
And that is hard. It is hard to change your mind, especially when you've told other people. You know, maybe you told people in your life, maybe people have expectations of you. And it is hard to go back and be like, I'm changing my mind. But I think for some reason, we like don't encourage that in people, where it's just like personal development. You're just changing your mind. You're finding something that works for you better. And there's nothing wrong with realizing like, oh, actually, I like this more. This is more of my path. Like, we're asking people to decide what they want to do forever when you're 20, you're a baby. Like, what are you know, of course you're going to grow up and you're going to change your mind. So it's insanity to think that people won't change their mind and like wouldn't want to follow through with actions that back that up. You know, or people are like, oh, you can change your mind, but don't just go veering over here. I'm like, so you want me to like want to do something, like you want me to change my mind, but then like live in this prison of my past self? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it's always okay to change your mind. Always, 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 always. Like I said, you're not losing anything. You've gained all this experience and knowledge along the way. You're going to bring it with you, and you're going to be an awesome, whatever the next version of you is. It's going to be fine.
Still ask me, oh, aren't you going to America? Wasn't that a thing?
And they hold it against you. It's so weird. Like, why? Like, oh, I changed my mind. And then people are like, oh, that's a failure. Like, it's not a failure. I just decided, seemed like the best. What's that mean? Like, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Now it doesn't seem like a good idea at the time. Just go with your gut. Do the next right thing.
And I also be like, I decided against it. And
also, I promise we'll watch again in a second. I feel like it's a lot of people who regret their past choices of maybe not following through with something, or people are jealous, or they want to do that too, but they are, held back for whatever reason. I think those people take a lot. And when you hear a lot of like nasty comments, I think a lot of them are people who are jealous or wish they could be doing it. So, or, regret not having pivoted in the past. And so they're going to put you down in order to make themselves feel better about the choices that they made.
I really like, for example, Stephen Bartlett's quitting framework. He talks about this in his fantastic book, Happy, Sexy Millionaire. Are you thinking about quitting? Yes. Why are you thinking about quitting? Either it's just hard or it sucks. If it's just hard, is the challenge worth the potential reward? Good. Yes or no? Cool. And if it sucks, do you believe you could make it not suck? And do you believe is the effort it would take to make it not suck worthwhile? And if so, do it. And if not, then quit. I really like this idea of the quitting framework, because this was sort of the thought process that went through my head. The value of having gone through the whole arduous process of becoming a doctor, even though you eventually made the decision. If you'd never gone to med school, would there still be an Ali Abdaal on YouTube? Probably not. That led to this YouTube channel. And now that's led to us getting to this point where you're watching this video probably like really.
And I think, once again, that's just something really good to remember is everything you've put into it hasn't been a waste. I had a lot of people tell me like, oh, going to MP school was a waste. You took someone's spot, you did yada, yada, yada. And it wasn't a waste because it got me to here. You know what I mean? And I really enjoy being where I am now. And I hope I'm helping people. And, I'm going to take it with me. And who knows what else is going to happen. In my wildest dreams, we're going to totally overturn the healthcare system. But you know what I mean? Like, so it's not a waste. It got you to where you are now. You've learned things from it. And focusing on those versus like that you're not doing exactly the cookie cutter thing that maybe you thought you would be doing 5-10 years ago. It's okay.
And the fact that I'm not a doctor right now, I don't think takes away from the fact that that journey was like still a thing. And so I don't really worry that there's a lot of sunk cost and it feels like time and effort wasted, because I think it was all great. It was a fantastic life experience along the way. So what is your advice to those who want to switch careers? The answer is, I don't know. I don't really have any advice to this other than test your assumptions, write them down, talk to them about it with people, because it's very easy to bullshit yourself, which is what I was doing for so long until people like my brother, people like Lewis Hose, people like other friends pointed out to me that the way that I was thinking about this was kind of flawed. I think it's like Richard Feynman says that the first person you must not fool is yourself, because you are the easiest person to fool.
I feel like everybody, like, in order to be a good adult, they have all these quotes. I'm like, where do you find your quotes? All I watch is Daniel Tiger with my children all day.
Ooh, Dr. Jones says, why for good? How about for now? Your ability to teach and communicate could make a world of difference in our profession. Do not squander that potential. Just my honest opinion. Oh, thank you. That's a very good point, actually. Like, for good is a kind of clickbaity, not really. But really, for good is a decision, is something that I had to kind of admit to myself. Realistically, it is actually for now. Like, I could always go back to medicine if I really wanted to. And then maybe, if my values and preferences change over time, I might go back into medicine. Realistically, probably not, because
Okay, so for this one, I'm still very much in the for now stage. I'm toying with the idea and I'm trying to be okay with the idea that maybe I never will go back and do like clinical work. Does that make me sad? And then when I realize like, no, it kind of just like battles with my whole identity because for so long I've identified, like wrapping my identity up with my job, like as this healthcare provider, like it's just messing with me. So I'm still very much in the, for my own mental sake, like for now camp, not thinking like, oh, this is for good. But the benefit of almost every decision, friends, is it doesn't have to be for good. You can change your mind.
Chris says, clickbait. I doubt you will quit medicine for good, to be honest. Your previous goal was to work part-time. Why the change then? Because I tried it. I think the thing with goals is that like I set the goal of, I think life would be good if as a part-time doctor. And then I tried it. I tested that assumption. And I realized that,
exactly.
Actually,
I love that. Like testing the assumption, like assuming everything is just like we're going through life and it's just like a constant experiment.
Actually, this is not the one. So then I had to
What
change
a cool way to kind of go through life. Like, will this work? Yes, no. And holding no criticism if it doesn't work. It's just like, oh, well, that was a fun experiment and it didn't work. Let's take what we've learned from it and moved on. I love it.
I think changing your mind is a sign of growth rather than a sign of, I don't know, clickbait or whatever. So finally, let's talk about what is next. And honestly, the answer is, I don't know. I think in the past, I felt like I needed to have a plan. I needed to have like a 5-year plan of like, this is what my life is going to look like. And then I felt like secure in myself knowing that I had a plan. But I think over time, I've kind of become more comfortable with uncertainty. Yes. And there's a nice quote, which is that often we prefer misery over uncertainty. And I'm not saying I was miserable in medicine. Being more comfortable with uncertainty and being able to answer the question of, what's your plan, son? With, I don't know, but I'll figure it out along the way. That's something that I'm trying to become more okay with. So what's next? I don't know. Writing a book. Hopefully that'll be good.
That's a super good spot to stop. What's next? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. Thank you, Allie, for imparting your wisdom on all of us. We have learned so much. Like I said, I'll leave that video linked down below. I think some of those thought exercises are really good to work through. I thought that was really helpful. I know he was like, I don't think this will be helpful, but I think it's really helpful to see how other people work through epic life changes and to realize like, oh, other people are nervous about the exact same things that I am nervous about. They've gone through it. I can go through it and just kind of give you a framework really to help you figure out what could be a good next step and to give you that little extra boost in case you need it of like, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to not know what you're doing as long as you're kind of actively exploring and like trying out new things, viewing life as a huge experiment where you're just testing hypotheses to see if they work. Obsessed with that idea. So that was really interesting and actually super duper helpful. Let me know if you liked doing like reaction videos. If you have any other ones you'd want me to react to. I'd like to react to something where I can be really snarky. I feel like this was much more serious and like mature, but I could really get down with like something to snark on. So if you have anything that I could do that's like probably medically related, do let me know. Thanks for hanging out. If you've made it this far, subscribe if you want to see more fun things like this. I'm also doing my healthcare series where I'm trying to like redo the entire world of healthcare and be like, here's what's wrong with it. Now someone take this information and fix it for me. How to find a job as a nurse practitioner in case you want to fill my spot, and all of that good stuff. So I'll leave the this video if you want to watch the whole thing. It was really good. Down below. And yeah, let us know in the comments what one you want on your gravestone. Epic question. We had a lot of good questions in this. And then just your thoughts about changing your career. Have you changed your career? Have you regretted it? What life hypotheses have you tested and realized worked or didn't work for you? My recent one is, like I said, being okay with not working clinically as an NP for now and seeing where that goes. All right, friends, I hope you have a lovely rest of your week. If this made you question all your life choices, I'm so sorry. Please enjoy the existential crisis to follow. Have a lovely week doing that. What a great way to start 2022. Yay. All right, bye guys. Oh, my throat. My voice is like... Avery asked me today, she's like, when are you going to sound like my mom again? I was like, what do I sound like? She's like, an old sick mom? I was like, oh, good. Harsh, but honest.